I'm Ryann Weatherford. I am the Vice President of Partnerships and Communications for Andretti Global.
My name is Jamie Chadwick, and I'm a racing driver in INDY Next by Firestone with Andretti Global.
My name is Allison Melangton, and I am the Senior Vice President of Penske Entertainment, which owns the NTT INDYCAR Racing Series and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
My name is Cara Krstolic. I'm the Executive Director for Race Tire Engineering and Production for Bridgestone Americas and Firestone Racing.
My name is Liz Dorrance. I am AVP of Marketing for Group 1001.
Well, thank you guys for sitting down with me today and joining us for a conversation to celebrate International Women's Month and talk a little bit about our roles as women in the motorsport industry or in areas that influence and touch the motorsport industry. So I guess let's just start with your career and kind of your background of how you came to be where you are and how that's brought you to motorsport, which is traditionally a male-oriented world. Jamie Chadwick, let's start with you.
So I fell into it all by accident, to be honest. Very lucky to fall into it, but didn't come from a racing background as such. It was purely my older brother that went go-karting that kind of inspired me to give it a go. And the more I think back to it, the more I'm very grateful that I had that sort of older brother figure to kind of follow into it, because from memory, when I started, it really was, as male-dominated as ever. Very, very few women that I ever even kind of came across in my sort of early career. And the fact that I had him to kind of follow into it and just ignite that passion was huge. And went from being a hobby, something I did for fun, to a little bit more serious, to then being, okay, this is what I want to do.
That's great. Allison, what brought you here?
My entire career has been in sports administration and sports management, and I've only been in motorsports for 10 years. But what brought me to motorsports from the other sports that I had worked on was the 100th running of the Indy 500. Having worked on a lot of global events, when the 100th running of the Indy 500 was coming up, I thought, I have got to be a part of that event, because I knew it would be record-breaking. There's only a few events in the whole world that have existed 100 years in the same city with the same format. And so that's how I jumped into motorsports, from the event side. But now, 10 years in, I'm never leaving. I love motorsports, and I think it's an amazing part of the sports ecosystem, and I'm in to stay.
Liz, for you, you're more of the corporate world, but
Correct.
Your experiences have brought you into motorsport through your company's involvement. How have you kind of found yourself in this circle?
Yeah, great question. So I grew up in the advertising world, so advertising and marketing, doing sports marketing with NHL. We have a partnership with the Pacers, with the NBA, college football, and you say 10 years. Only recently, I've only been involved in this in the past several, so 2 to 4, and have also fallen in love with motorsports. So through our partnerships with Indy and NASCAR, I've been introduced to the sport and been able to influence how we use our marketing assets across different platforms, races, hospitality events, and also creating regional events to engage our customer base and also our sales base around certain races across the country. So it has been a lovely experience so far. So I'm really fortunate.
Well, for me, I think I was meant to be an engineer. My grandfather was an engineer for NASA, and my mom was a science teacher. So I always loved the science and mechanical aspect of it. And I, like Jamie, kind of fell into racing as well. So I was in my second year of mechanical engineering, and somebody invited me to go down to the machine shop where they were designing and building an open wheel car for the Formula SAE project. So students designing and building an open wheel car. I didn't know at that point what a plus or minus screwdriver was, or which way to turn them even. All I knew about cars was my dad really swore a lot when he was changing the carburetor on his Volkswagen. But I learned there. I learned how to use a mill and lathe and all kinds of machine tools. And I just kind of fell in love with cars at that point. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could be paid to work with race cars for a living?
That's great. For me, I fell into it as well. I wasn't looking for a career in sports or in motorsports, and was just looking for a job in general, and had applied for something and didn't get it at the time. The team ended up filling from within, and then 8 months later, out of the blue, the team called me up to be Michael Andretti's assistant. And I said, sure, why not? And here I am later, and just kind of evolved, and now heavily involved in the communications and partnership side for the team. So I think we all have kind of taken a different path and kind of stumbled into it in some ways, but here we are. So with it, you mentioned that your brother was kind of really what got you into the sport and having that. But what about mentors for everyone? Throughout your careers, as you've come up, did you have anyone that you really look to that helped guide you? One thing that I think is so great about the INDYCAR paddock in the series is there's a mentor everywhere you look. There's so many strong women in this paddock and working in this sport that it's really easy to kind of find someone that you can learn from or help on the other side too.
I'll start with this one. I think INDYCAR paddock is amazing. There's so many amazing people there. But I think even on International Women's Day, it's important to celebrate the men that have helped us along the way. So whether it's brothers, whether it's teammates, my previous manager, when I first started in motorsports, he took me around to all of the race teams and the engineers and said, "This is Cara. Please pay attention to her because she's going to run the place someday." And just to have that powerful role model, whether it's a male or female that helps you along the way, I think is to be celebrated.
Yeah. Liz, how have you found it on the corporate side, kind of climbing that ladder?
Yeah, I think on the corporate side in traditional advertising, it's, the role that I had from an account perspective is heavily dominated with women. So I've had wonderful women bring me up, carry me along. As I got into more sports related advertising, you start to see more men show up and men in senior positions. So I would also echo that. And I have appreciated the mentorship from men and women, but also cross department. So I think having someone on your side within your department is great, but that cross-department mentorship has really meant a lot to me.
Yeah, I think similarly, growing up, obviously, my older brother was a big part of it. I didn't have many role models as such, which I think in a way is a positive thing because it meant that I was doing it really because I just wanted to do it. I wasn't doing it because I wanted to emulate anyone else or try and be like anyone. I just did it because it was what I wanted to do. But one thing that, to your point, of this paddock especially, in INDYCAR, I think there isn't a huge amount of hierarchy, or I don't feel that so much. So yeah, whether it's Michael leaning into the cockpit to give advice or whoever it is, you feel very much like one paddock and that you've got advice and support. And for me, coming from Europe, knowing how much success women had had in this paddock, especially now being over here, I can kind of understand that better. And yeah, just the environment and the culture of it really does feel like I'm able to thrive, which is really special.
For me, I've had a lot of both men and women mentors that have really poured into me, given me great feedback, people that care about you a lot and want you to be successful. And in motorsports, Lynn St. James was actually one of the first people for me with that. As soon as I started working in motorsports, she called me right away and said, "You don't know me, but," and she's just been great. And she's so encouraging to other women, and is such a good connector of women. So I think that the women in the paddock are strong and strong together, and someone like Lynn that takes the time, the effort, and the intention to get everybody together and focus on that has been a real benefit for me.
Being a female executive or in motorsport, sometimes it's really easy to get imposter syndrome. And have you, right? Like you just, every now and then you're looking around and it just kind of hits you. And have you ever had one of those moments where like maybe you look around and you realize like you have the seat at the table and kind of question how I got here and like, how do you come through that?
I love that. I'll start with this one because I think, a lot of people, men and women, but maybe especially women, struggle with imposter syndrome, and I certainly do. And sometimes you come to the racetrack and maybe it's the Indianapolis 500 and I realize everyone is on the tires that my team has designed and my team has built, and you just look at it and go, okay, do I really belong here? And then there are certain days at work when you just manage to solve a phenomenal, unsolvable problem, or you build up a teammate or something happens and you're like, yeah, this is why I'm here. I deserve to be here. So I think you have to cherish those moments where you just really realize and see and like remember those, record those. I think those are all very key, but a lot of us struggle with imposter syndrome.
I think that notion of deserving to be there has been a challenge for me, getting over that hurdle. Like, oh no, I actually have expertise in this field. I can actually talk about it. I belong here. I deserve to be here. I think I had more of it when I was young, maybe misplaced. And then as I grew in my career and was exposed to more opportunities like panels and interviews, it was overcoming that imposter syndrome, that do I really belong here? That deserve part was hard for me to overcome.
Definitely. I think when I was younger, I was kind of blissfully unaware and quite oblivious, which was quite a nice thing in a way because I just kind of rolled with whatever and I didn't care. But as I've got older, for sure, it's been a big thing. And actually looking back in my early career, I wish that I didn't have that kind of feeling of, obviously, I'm often having to prove myself to kind of show, I can do this. I can be as quick as the guys. Whereas actually I should have just gone out and done what was right for me. And the one thing that stands out actually as a memory of sort of over time is, if ever I told anyone as a driver, or even if just walking into the paddock today, they're like, okay, what's your role? And if I said driver, they'd go, really? What? And be surprised. And so I used to lie. I used to say I did something else because I didn't want to own the fact that I was a driver, and I didn't like that kind of awkward confrontation. And actually now I'm like, okay, no, I should own the fact that I'm a driver, and that's that's what I'm here to do.
For me, we have 9 executives on the Penske Entertainment Leadership Team, and 4 are women, and so that's almost half. And so I don't feel the imposter syndrome so much anymore, because there's more and more women that are naturally at the table making the decisions, leading our various divisions. So I wouldn't say I have it so much anymore.
That's great. I think that's something too that like we can all look forward to as we continue to grow, and is kind of diminishing that feeling. We talked about doing this a little bit to celebrate International Women's Month, but I wanted to ask what your honest thoughts are on those celebratory months, right? Like, Jamie, do you ever just want to be the driver and not the lady driver? Do you ever just want to be the engineer and not the female engineer? You know, how do we keep those celebrations genuine and not feel like we're just celebrated because of that?
Oh, I completely agree. It feels sometimes, there's a few things that sometimes feel forced, and actually a lot of my career, actually, there's been big moments that I feel like, it feels like I've, not tokenism, but I've kind of been put in this position because of my gender. But actually now, the older I get, the more I reflect on it, and I value the importance of it. And a lot of that is visibility. Any young girl looking at what we're doing today, I think if they can see it and see it as an opportunity and go, oh, actually, I want to do that, and I didn't know that was something that I can do, and that kind of see it, you can be it culture, then if it adds to that, then I think it's got every bit of value, even if personally sometimes you're doubting whether it's needed or not.
I agree completely with Jamie. I was the second woman in history to be the CEO of a Super Bowl host committee. And that was such a surprise to everyone that there was another woman leading that position. And now there's been a whole bunch of women in that position. But I think the visibility piece is really important, because when you have these celebratory days and you lift up women and show opportunities that they've had, then it inspires young girls to want to do those things and know they can do those things. So I believe the celebratory days are important.
I think it's great for that visibility for the month, but I always try to think, like, what happens in April? You know, I'm here representing the women's ERG. I'm here because all of our female employees are on cars this weekend, both in Arizona and here in Florida. So it's a big month for us to celebrate women at the company and also our sponsorships. But what happens in April? How are we continuing this? And I think that also needs to be talked about during this month.
Absolutely.
Excellent. I can tell you what happens in May, though. I think, just like Jamie said, that there are times where I get, somebody will say, oh, that's the first women chief engineer in INDYCAR. I'm like, okay, but that's great. But look at all the progress we've had. Look at all the women that are out there. You've got Danielle, who's a race engineer this year, and lots of other phenomenal engineers in the paddock, people that are doing amazing work. And sometimes I just get like, oh, let's not talk about the women thing. And then I see a little girl at the racetrack that is just so excited. We had maybe 12 years ago at Portland, somebody came up to me, not Portland, it was another race. 12 years ago, somebody came up to me at a racetrack, a little girl, and she's like, can you sign my hat? And I was like, I'm not a driver. She's like, I know who you are. You're Cara. You're the engineer. And I was just like, okay. So, and this young lady is now an engineer, and she works at a motorcycle manufacturing place. So it's just amazing to see these people that come in and that are interested, and they might not know that they're interested in science or motorsports, but they see somebody like Jamie in the car, they see us as engineers, they see Allison as an executive, and they think, oh, well, maybe there is a role for me here.
That's really great. I think for me, I wish the month wasn't needed. I'm like, kind of to Liz's point, like, what happens in April, what happens in September, how do we make it not just, okay, one time a year we care, but how do we continue, being those role models and for those young girls at the track, and like bring them along with us year round. What about the companies that you work for? Tell me a little bit about what Group 1001 is doing and helping to advocate as well.
Sure. Group 1001 at many levels really has leaned into supporting women. And it starts with Dan Towers, our CEO. So he really wanted his sponsorships to reflect his values within the workforce. So, as I mentioned, I'm here representing the women's ERG. And then Dan went out and leaned into sponsorships of women's sports, and also making key relationships with Billie Jean King, Annika Sormson, and as you may have heard, Caitlin Clark this week. But that extends even into our products. So we just launched Parity Flex, which is a financial product designed for women by women. So guaranteeing an income for them, so a paycheck for life for women. So it really starts with Dan, and then he reflects his values and what he wants for women throughout the company.
That's great. So Bridgestone is an amazing corporation. I have never felt like the female at Bridgestone. When people asked me about, getting the chief engineer role, they asked, I think somebody actually had mentioned specifically, oh, it's good that they put a female in this role. And I thought, well, that's a strange thing to say, because they always want to put the best person in the role. So there are plenty of things like employee resource groups. There are lots of things that are done and celebrated for women there at Bridgestone. But the key is they always want to put the best person in the role. So it's something to me that is really valued about Bridgestone.
At Penske Entertainment, we have a really strong collective group of women leaders there, and so we lift each other and the other female employees up a lot internally, but also externally. We apply a lot for different recognitions and opportunities to really celebrate our women. And in the 10 years that I have been there, I have seen more and more women put into leadership positions with full support from our ownership and from Mark Miles, our CEO. And like Dan, Mark is very smart and hires a lot of very strong, competent women, and that has proven very well for the company.
Jamie, on your side, I know you mentioned growing up you didn't have a lot of female drivers to really look up to, and the times have changed. At Andretti, we have 3 drivers across our platforms. Yourself, Katie Munnings in Extreme E, and then Ashton Harrison in the IMSA program. How great is it to know that you have teammates that are also female drivers?
It's really great, but it goes beyond that. If you look historically how many female drivers they've run in INDYCAR as well, I think it shouldn't necessarily be a factor, but it really is. And I think that really adds to the culture that we have at Andretti. And to kind of further Liz's point, Dan, Michael, the sort of hires that be within the team really kind of allow that to filter down. So culturally coming over here, the reason I came over here was because of that opportunity that they gave me. And now I'm over here, I feel very much there was my oyster within the team. They want me to have success. They want me to do the best as possible. There's not, okay, you're here, great, you tick the box. That's not the case at all. They want me to win races, and they're giving me the best opportunity to do that, which I value more than anything else.
One of the things I love about motorsports is that it doesn't matter the gender of the person in motorsports. So it doesn't matter that Jamie's female or not. It's her results that stand up. It doesn't matter that that I'm designing tires as a female. It's just the tires that are out there. You're representing your team. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. So that's one of the beauties of motorsports. It's just one of the platforms that you can just absolutely compete on an equal playing field.
Continuing the theme of mentorship and both sides of it, what advice would you have to, a girl out there that maybe wants to go into the corporate world or sporting or motorsport specifically?
My personal advice, particularly on sort of the driving side, but I think it applies across everything, is there is no better time than now. I just look at how many opportunities there are now, and even how many opportunities I had, and how further forward we already are in the last couple of years, especially, that, yeah, there is no better time. And if you are interested in it, even if you're not, just give it a go, try it. And like I said, there's no better time.
There's so many opportunities in motorsports that aren't specifically about the car, and lawyers, finance, IT. So I would say to a young girl, do your homework. There's lots of opportunity. If you don't want to be an engineer, there's still other opportunities that aren't car specific. And a lot of people that feel like that's a question for them. Do you have to know a lot about the car? You don't. You can have a great and successful career like you've had without knowing the intricacies of the car.
That's so true. I think so often you watch a race, you see something, and all you see is the driver and the 6 or 7 guys over the wall changing tires. And there's such a world beyond that with the front office, with the engineering. It gets really deep.
So I love at Firestone Racing, we're led by 2 women. So myself on the technical side and Lisa Boggs on the marketing communication side. And it's very rare that you go into a professional motorsports organization and the people at top are women, even all the way up to our chief marketing officer. So it's really neat to see. And my piece of advice that I always give is to reach out to people. Their chances are people like talking about themselves. So if there's a young girl that might be interested in motorsports or driving or marketing or engineering, find somebody that's in that field. People love talking about themselves. And then my Lisa Boggs piece of advice, she always says, raise your hand. If there's something you might not feel comfortable for, just raise your hand and volunteer for something. You might not be 100% qualified, but you'll learn while you're there.
Absolutely.
I think advice I would give to someone coming up in marketing, advertising, sports marketing, whatever it may be, is to celebrate your wins. I think as women, we're conditioned to be humble, to be grateful, but I think celebrating your wins and being an advocate for yourself just really helps not only you, but the women around you.
Absolutely. Punch above your weight, hit hard, and celebrate when it lands.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us today. Happy International Women's Day. Happy International or Women's History Month. And thanks for your time.
Thank you.